want people to understand that Johns Hopkins Hospital has this hierarchy of, patients, who's important, who is not. They don't go by, or at least that's my experience, that they did not go by the seriousness, the severity of his condition. And so they neglected him. And I want people to know that this kind of neglect for the little people who pay their taxes, who are honest in their jobs, who have an insurance, but are still considered little people. And that's why they neglected him, because he was not an important person. I want them to know, I want the world to know that this was not right. So, when my husband was diagnosed with bladder cancer, this was in January, and we didn't know that it was cancer. So we went to our local hospital, and that's when we found out that this was cancer. So they did the third transurethral, transurethral resection of bladder tumor. So that's when they found out at my local hospital that he had bladder cancer, and that was stage 2. So they couldn't do anything more for him. The next step would be oncology. And so that's when we decided to go to Johns Hopkins Hospital. And their oncologist, we went to them in February 2019. And a few of us were there. My brother-in-law, my husband's brother, was there as well. And he asked the oncologist if, would the cancer spread further within the next few months, 2 months or so? And the oncologist did not say that would be the case. He said, no, that's not going to happen most probably. And then, so the date that they thought, the appointment for surgery, they said, yes, he needed surgery, bladder surgery. And they said that could happen later, like April. So why is it that the oncologist did what he did, and then he sent us to the urologist, and the urologist, we talked with the urologist, and it was decided that he would have his surgery around April. But well before April, when was this? This was in March. In March, he was having issues with his bladder, the bleeding and whatnot. And he was admitted in Hopkins on the 22nd of March, I believe, 22nd of March, 2019. And after that, they did CBI, continual bladder irrigation, on him and hurt him badly. And we thought that's the case. But later on, when he went to another hospital for the surgery, finally, in another hospital, that's when we found out that the CBI need not have hurt. But at Hopkins, that also hurt him badly. And then they prepped him up 3 days. I believe that was the 1st of April, 2nd and 3rd of April, 2019. They prepped him up for surgery. And that means that, the first day they even took him to the operating table, and they brought him back saying, no, we don't have, what was it they said, a room or something. They don't have. So how come they don't do these things before they prep a patient who is so weak? And they, of course, they didn't let him eat or drink, and so he suffered. And they did this 3 days. They prepped him up, and no surgery. They brought him back to his room, and they said, wouldn't he want to go back home? He would be more comfortable at home. And that if he needed to be hospitalized before the surgery date, the appointment for the surgery, he could be taken to a local hospital, and that then they would transport him. And the very same day, so the 4th of April, they had him sign this discharge document so that they would not be responsible. They would not be held responsible for letting him go. And yet, they were the ones who encouraged him to go, saying that if he stayed, this is what would happen to him. That they would prop him up, they would not let him eat, they would not let him drink, suffer the whole day. And then they'll say, oh, okay, we couldn't find a slot for you. So if they took him to, prepped him and took him to surgery or tried, that means they understood that this was a serious case. And yet they then let him go. And then the very same day that they signed and let him go, that very same day when he came back home, he had this, so like cardiac arrest, and he had problems. And he had to be admitted to our local hospital. I had to call 911, and then he had to be rushed to a local hospital where he was diagnosed again with cardiac, so issues like congestive heart failure and even a heart attack. So he stayed at that hospital, and then I think I talked with somebody, some patient relations to somebody, and I was so upset. I said, that, I don't know what they did. I don't even know what would happen. I don't even know if he would go back there. But anyway, we couldn't keep him at that local hospital. He needed proper care. So when I called, they wouldn't listen to me. So the doctors of that hospital, local hospital, Anne Arundel Medical Center, they contacted Hopkins, but repeatedly Hopkins said that they could not take him back. Although when they let him go on the 4th of April, they said that if there was any issue and he had to be hospitalized, he could be taken to the local hospital and they would transport him. But they didn't. And our local hospital called and tried. And repeatedly they said that they have 9 patients before my husband. So they could not take him. And so I contacted a friend who contacted a doctor, a family friend doctor, who contacted Washington Hospital Center. And they were very nice. Washington Hospital Center was very nice. They arranged to take my husband from the Anne Arundel Medical Center. They rushed him and they tried to do everything, but it was too late. They saw if he was ready if his heart was ready for surgery, and they saw yes. And they performed surgery on him on the 20th of May. But that's when they found out that it had reached to many places. It had progressed. It had flared. So they tried, but it was too late. And I blame Johns Hopkins Hospital, for not realizing, I blame them for neglecting my husband. I blame them for being so indifferent. And every time I wrote to them, all they did, the patient's relations person, the administrator, she just sent her condolences. I don't want condolences. I want them to acknowledge. I want them to take responsibility and admit that their action towards him was negligent. They neglected him. They were indifferent. And it's not that they are indifferent with everybody. Hopkins has a reputation. And that is why we took him to Hopkins. And so many people have good things to say about Hopkins. So why couldn't they take my husband seriously? Why did they neglect him? He died on 10th July 2019. 6 months. And my husband's insurance was not a bad insurance. FEP Blue. Because he was a federal government employee. I keep feeling that if the doctors at Hopkins took him seriously in February, when we first went to them, February 2019, if they took him seriously, because they should understand that cancer spreads rapidly. And he was diagnosed, when they did TART, he was diagnosed with stage 2. So when we went to Hopkins, they should have understood. And my brother-in-law asked that, isn't this going to get worse? No, it's okay. He can have it. No, that was not okay. He should have had his surgery in February or in March, and then he would have lived. They should take responsibility. They should acknowledge. I don't want their condolences. That's all they do. They send condolences every time I write to them. I wrote to them when I contacted you. I wrote to them too. And again, the patient relations officer, that was the same person, Sharita Johnson. She was nice in her response. She was, decent and nice. But I don't want condolences. I want them to acknowledge that what they did was unconscionable. It was wrong. They should have taken him seriously. They should have done what was necessary, because when we went, it was already serious. Yeah. Every time I contacted them about my husband's death, that's all they do. They just say how sorry, they just express their condolences. I don't want condolences. I want responsibility. I want a public, if possible, a public acknowledgement that they have made a mistake, that they have been indifferent, that they have been negligent. I want this acknowledgement so that more patients don't have to suffer because they're not important enough. Was my husband not important enough? You know, when important people go to hospitals, they get special attention, whether or not their situation requires it. My husband's situation required it, and he didn't get it. 3 times, first, second, third April, 3 times, they prepped him up and took him. The first day, they even took him to the surgery table, and they sent him back from the surgery table. And he hadn't eaten, he hadn't drunk anything because they were preparing him for the surgery. Finally, they said that this is what is going to happen. So wouldn't it be better if he went home where he would be more comfortable? They made him sign this document so that they would not be responsible. That my husband is choosing to go. But why did he choose to go? Because they advised it. They recommended it. They encouraged it. And then the same day, he had to be taken to our local hospital. And why didn't they then transport him? Why did they say they had 9 patients every time the local hospital called? They kept saying there were 9 patients ahead of him. Why wasn't my husband's case, the urgency, how serious his situation was? Why couldn't they see that? Because he was not an important person. I want people to understand that Johns Hopkins Hospital has this hierarchy of, patients, who's important, who is not. They don't go by, or at least that's my experience, that they did not go by the seriousness, the severity of his condition. And so they neglected him. And I want people to know that this kind of neglect for the little people who pay their taxes, who are honest in their jobs, who have an insurance, but are still considered little people. And that's why they neglected him, because he was not an important person. I want them to know, I want the world to know that this was not right. That he, just because he's not an important person, that he was set aside. I want the world to know that this hierarchy, this treatment of people like us, ordinary people like us, this should not be. What should be is that they should take a patient and administer the right kind of treatment because of the seriousness. That's how they should treat patients. They should judge by the seriousness and not by the importance. Not by, okay, these people are before me and I just can't make room for Nazre Jamil because Nazre Jamil is a small fry. That they should not do. They should be more intelligent and compassionate and treat patients according to the patient's needs, not in this mechanical way, not in this indifferent way, negligent way. They should be more intelligent